Day 22, False Dilemma, Fallacy, and Appeal to Emotion. December 22nd would be a day that both Tina and Chris would remember, as it was a very uncomfortable day for both of them. A nagging thought had been developing in the back of Chris's mind. His parents and teachers all insisted that Santa was real. However, if Chris were to discover that Santa wasn't real, what would that imply about his parents? Would it brand them as liars or suggest that they were simply stupid? The more and more his thoughts went in that direction, the more he started wishing that he had never embarked on this journey. He felt he was between the devil and the deep blue sea. If Santa wasn't real, it raised the uncomfortable possibility that his parents were either liars, morally questionable, or simply stupid. Could he truly believe his parents would deceive him? The prospect of Santa not being real really threatened to undermine the magic of Christmas, but he couldn't ignore the evidence he had uncovered the day before. Meanwhile, Tina had been summoned to the principal's office. The news of her passionate declaration that Santa wasn't real had reached the principal, and he was quite unhappy about the ripple effect it was causing. Parents were expressing concerns that the school was undermining the Christmas spirit, and the principal was keen to address the situation. So he told Tina off and said a lot of things about her having to learn to be a team player, of learning not always to rock the boat. He told her that although she was intelligent, she should realize that she did not know everything. The fulminating conclusion was a question directly aimed at Tina. Which would you prefer, to believe in Santa or be a Grinch who ruins Christmas for everyone? Upon which Tina was ashamed to admit she burst into tears. She remained silent, resisting the urge to speak. Despite disliking being in trouble, she stood firm and refused to openly betray her beliefs. But she lacked the courage to meet the principal's gaze and communicate this directly. Eventually he allowed her to leave, observing her sob silently for a few moments. So when Tina and Chris met up for their daily club meeting, they both were rather silent and glum, and just sat together silently for a while. Tina spoke up first. "What's wrong, Chris?" He sighed and told her about his thoughts, and the dreadful feeling he had that Tina might be right about Santa not being real, but that he did not want to think about what that meant for him. Tina listened sympathetically. He got the feeling she really understood him when she interjected, "Yeah, that does suck," from time to time. She waited until he had finished talking. When he had finished, he knew what he had to do without her even having to say anything. He had been looking at the ground while talking, but now he looked up at her and smiled and said, "Thanks so much for listening, Tina. Thanks for understanding, even though you are in a different place. I know what to do. I need to talk to my mother." Tina smiled warmly and said, "Of course, and I think you do. And you know what? Maybe there are not only those two alternatives, that either your parents are liars or stupid. Maybe there is something we are not seeing. Do call me after and let me know." "But what is up with you?" Chris asked. "You are also looking glum today." Tina sighed and said, "It's nothing compared to your problem," she admitted, and told him about being called into the principal's office. "Yeah," Chris said, "I saw you go in and was asking myself why. This is really impossible behavior of that guy. His behavior is just absurd, as if those are the only two options, to believe in Santa or to be a Grinch. Who does he think he is?" Tina felt the tears welling up in her again. "But I was so weak," she sniffled. "I did not stand up for my beliefs. I just stood there and was silent, apart from my sobs." She chuckled between sniffles at that. "It was the best I could do not to recant my beliefs. Why did I care so much? Why could I not just say what I think?" Chris froze in stunned silence for a moment. "That is what's bothering you?" he asked. "I thought it was because you hate being in trouble." Tina had to smile at that and admit, "Yeah, I don't like that either." Chris looked at her and said, "You are brave. Even before we became friends, I thought you were amazingly brave to dare to be different. I just thought you didn't give a damn what others think." Perhaps it would have been ideal to confront that ignorant principal, remind him that we live in a country where people are free to hold or reject beliefs, and he should be ashamed of himself. But first, that would have required superhuman courage, basically impossible for a good girl who never wants to be in trouble, and also hates conflict. It was a really difficult situation, made more difficult by the fact that you really do want people to be happy and celebrate a great Christmas. I don't know if anyone who cares like you do would have been able to act differently." Tina smiled tremulously. "Do you really think so?" Chris took a moment to reflect, recalling his mother's words about how people often struggle to be kind to themselves. He posed a hypothetical scenario to Tina. Imagine I had shared that story with you, the exact same story, but about me instead of you. What would you say to me? Would you tell me that I wasn't brave, or I should despise myself? Tina didn't need any time to think, responding emphatically, "Of course not." Her eyes lit up, and Chris finally saw the familiar light in her eyes that he liked so much. You're right. Maybe I am too hard on myself. It's not my responsibility that Christmas is great for everyone. It is good to remember that I am not so important that the happiness of the world depends on me. Do you really think I'm brave? You are the bravest child I know, he told her, and he really meant it. They added the following entry to their sleuthing book. Beware of false dilemmas. Beware when people or yourself are appealing to emotion. Beware when people use your personality against you. If you are a person who easily takes responsibility, when someone tells you you are responsible, remember to question it. If you are someone who questions yourself, make sure you don't let that give you the impression that everything is your fault. Appeal to emotion is a tactic that uses emotions to influence or persuade others in an argument, rather than using logical reasoning. It is a form of manipulation that is often used when rational arguments are lacking or ineffective. False dilemma fallacy, in which a limited number of options are presented, even though other options may exist. This fallacy is often used to create confusion and pressure the audience into choosing between two options, one of which is usually less desirable. Argumentum ad baculum. Argument from the club, also argumentum ad baculum. Argument from strength, muscular leadership. Non-negotiable demands, hard power, bullying, the power play. Fascism, resolution by force of arms, shock and awe. These fallacies or persuasions by force, violence, brutality, terrorism, superior strength, raw military might, or threats of violence do not make something true. Tina, or there is no alternative. Also, love it or leave it fallacy, get over it. A very common contemporary extension of the either-or fallacy, in which someone in power crushes critical thought by announcing that there is no realistic alternative to a given standpoint, status, or action, arbitrarily ruling that any or all other options are out of bounds, or announcing that a decision has been made and any further discussion is insubordination, disloyalty, treason, disobedience, or simply a waste of precious time when there's a job to be done. This Tina, or there is no alternative fallacy, is most often a naked power play, a slightly more sophisticated variety of argumentum ad baculum.